going on, guys? Just before I start, let me know if this thing is being a little weird, because when I was testing it out, in OBS, it was being a little weird. So if is this everything's okay? I just want somebody to comment and I'll get started, because I just want to check. I don't want anything to like explode or be anything bad before I get started. And it's gonna be a fun one tonight, though. It's gonna be a fun one tonight. Just I need someone to let me know if everything's okay. Am I sounding well? Is my face, is it good? Because once again, OBS was being a little weird before I came on, and I wanted to know from you guys if everything looks fine to me. Potato says that's good. That's good. Okay. So, welcome everybody to the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. This is episode number 95. I haven't done this podcast in about a month, so this is going to be an interesting podcast, and something I was thinking about, actually, honestly enough, when I was in the shower, because I'm like, well, my 1-year anniversary is coming up, and I don't know how to celebrate it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go live on YouTube. I'm going to talk about my journey. And I haven't done a podcast episode in a month. It's all been basically videos and live streams and stuff like that. So we're going to go by the topics. I kind of set up a template here. How it started, interacting with content creators, 4 months without sports, plunge in views, adding the Yankees football season, road 100 subscribers, and where I am now. Obviously, this channel has just a small background noise. That's unfortunate. That the fan's the issue, and I apologize for that. It's computer, it's that stuff. But that's probably in like most of my videos. But anyway, let's go down and let's start with it. So some of the new guys around here, and I consider them fairly new. When you're on YouTube, you get new viewers and old viewers, and the old viewers, sometimes will not like your content. Viewers come in and out. And the ones I see in the comments, like Benny, Joel, those are fairly new to me, Potato included as well. Because those, in my opinion, or at least, you guys found me through the hub. Potato, you found me through the entertainer. If I'm getting that correctly, if I'm doing something wrong, or if I'm saying something wrong, I stand corrected. But let's skip that part. Let's go to the first part, my journey. My journey does not start on April 17th, 2020. My journey starts going back, I'm going to go ahead and say 2016. It was July of 2016, and I don't remember. I usually have a good memory, but I don't remember where or when I started this whole YouTube thing. And this was actually not on this channel, but I have a personal email, and that's where I started my first YouTube channel. And I didn't necessarily have a name for the podcast, or at least it was kind of a show, but it was me, Sean, and Luca, the same guys from the Boys in the Big Apple podcast. But it was actually how many years ago? So we did those shows, and obviously that's all deleted off my channel, my personal channel. Even if I sent the link, all deleted. I deleted it a couple of years ago. So, started there. We started doing, talking about sports and stuff like that. Yankees was a big topic. Big topic was about whether the Yankees would actually be a part of the playoff race. That was 2016, and they didn't go to the playoffs. And my brother actually said, they're going to the playoffs. I'm like, no, they're not. They have so many teams to beat. But from then on, it started, let's say, I don't know, I had less motivation to do it, because my main thing was get the 3 of us to do it. And most of the time, it was only 2 of us. Sean had different things to do. His parents always worked, so a lot of the time was at his cousin's house. The technology and the way we used YouTube wasn't like I do now. I didn't use OBS. I didn't even know what some of these, platforms were and stuff like that. So I kind of just dropped the ball from there. I said, you know what? Basically done with this. I'm not going to really do anything else. I didn't really stop until probably, I'm going to say, a couple weeks into either freshman year or something like that. But there was actually one time where Sean had a YouTube channel. And his was by his name as well, Sean Cacaro. And I remember this one show we did. And this was when I first moved into my farmhouse. I lived on a farm for a little bit. A farm, barn, whatever. There was the guy, he had horses next door. He had chickens. He basic Pennsylvania lifestyle. And I don't mean to put that in any harm's way for anyone who gets offended or whatnot. But I remember we set it up. And this was obviously, once again, on Sean's YouTube channel. Luca was holding the camera. Let's see. I recorded a good portion. Shout outs to Jonathan in the chat. He's Sean's cousin, by the way, guys. Shout outs to Jonathan. This talk is giving me a lot. Shout outs to guys in the chat, Joseph, everyone else. But Jonathan Gaming, he actually recorded Sean's second video, which was basically on the WWE. But Sean, being back then, was more redneck oriented. Even though his family's from the city. But those bastards kick and bite. Lesson in life, before I keep going on, never stand behind a horse. Never stand behind a horse. Stand on the left side, not the right. Right is not, the dangerous part, but do not stand behind a horse. I've never experienced that. I've just been told that, and I know why, because they kick. But anyway, the first video on Sean's channel was... let me just show this because YouTube is... So the first video on Sean's channel, we had our school laptops. They were MacBooks. They were small. And we were just talking about sports and stuff like that. Like Sean was bragging, my Steelers have 6 rings. Your Giants, they only have 4 and stuff like that. And the camera was, we were recording this not on the laptops because that's where we got our information from. But that was being recorded on Sean's phone. I think it was like a Nokia at the time or something like that. Luca was holding it, but it was very shaky. So, obviously, once again, the technology that we used back then was not necessarily the greatest. We were not in the YouTube community like all these big YouTubers now. So, those computers, so bad. Well, that's because they're school computers, and, they block everything that's not educated-oriented. Yeah, but basically, we did that, and then at the end of the video, we started... we started talking shit about the Red Sox, basically. So we started doing this, fuck the Red Sox, fuck the fans, and a couple of my friends picked up on it, and they're like, I don't get why you would do that. I said, I hate the Red Sox. That's been living with me, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you go to Max Webster's channel, he interviewed me. I didn't like football for a couple of years. You could ask the two of them. Being Sean and Luca. I did not like football for a couple of years, probably until 7th, 8th grade. That's when I started getting into the Giants and stuff like that. The strike in 94 stopped me from watching baseball and have not followed since, so I don't follow much baseball content, but I do love my Giants. Hey, listen, shout-outs to that. I mean, I don't know much about the strike in 94. I know there was a strike in 94. I just don't know much about it. But carrying on, pretty much did that video. That video got a lot of views because I advertised it on my Instagram. Sean advertised it on his Instagram. That video got 172 views to the last time I checked. And Sean did a second video where he was talking about the WWE and a couple other sports. I think it was called the Redneck Minute. Johnny will remember if he's still here because he was actually the one recording on Sean's phone. But he was basically jotting everything down and basically talking about I remember he was talking about a couple of sports. But anyway... So basically from there, months went on, and we were in freshman year, I think, at that point. But it does ruin people's brains. Yeah, I do agree with you, Joseph. But months went on, and we didn't necessarily have the time. We didn't necessarily have the motivation. It wasn't like I am now, where I'm keeping up with the constant content. That was a different me back then, and I had a social life. But then again, we lived in Pennsylvania in a very small town where there was no, transportation like you see in New York City. It was very different. But, we just couldn't keep tabs on it. So, in the end, I ended up deleting all those YouTube videos, as I mentioned before. I remember some of the videos, not all of them. But I remember deleting all those YouTube videos. I'm like, what's the use of this? And what if my friends see it? Because I guess at the time I was kind of oriented based on self-confidence and what other people thought of me. But keep going with that one. So Sean ended up deleting his videos. He live streamed on PS4 a little bit, but the weird thing is, like, you see a lot of gaming YouTubers, and a lot of them rage. A lot of them are very loud, like PewDiePie. The guys who live stream their gaming. Sean wanted everything to be quiet, and you could ask him. This is nothing against him, but he wanted like everything to be, basically silent. Everything to be calm and not cursing and stuff like that, which is the opposite of what you would expect from a gaming channel and stuff like that. But in the end, Sean was like, you know what, the use of this, I'm going to be working soon, delete all the videos. So a couple of months later, and this was in the process of, I remember we were planning this in July. It was me, Sean, Luca, and another friend. July of 2018. And this was a month before I moved back to Brooklyn. And we were saying, listen, we could start a podcast. We could start talking about stuff, just some random stuff, we start talking about baseball, football, gaming, just generally bullshitting. And, we started on, I think it was July 12th, we started coming up with that stuff. So our name at the time was Central Media Podcast. It's kind of weird. That's actually the email, like an account and stuff. This is basically the Central Media Podcast channel. I restructured it a couple months after we retired the whole thing. I turned it into a Madden gaming channel, but then I'm like, you know what? Let me get rid of the videos, and then I started this channel, but we'll get to that. So we started Central Media Podcast, and I'll tell you guys how it went. So we basically did it via, I believe, Skype. StreamYard, that stuff didn't exist then. It's either Skype or it was Skype or the Google meetings, Google Hangouts. It was one of those two. And we were recording and doing our stuff, and we didn't have like the greatest internet at the time, so we didn't put our cameras on or anything else. It was just basically low budget, low funded. And that night that we started recording, it wasn't July 12th. It was actually a month later. It was August 14th, I believe. Yeah, somewhere around there. If it wasn't August 14th, it was something else. I'm happy I deleted the videos I've uploaded on my channel. Well, a lot of people, when they record early and in low budget, it's not necessarily the greatest. But anyway, Google Meet. It was actually Google Hangouts back then, but Google Meet now is like a more oriented kind of Zoom thing. So going back to that part of, the day we started streaming and stuff like that, and we started talking. So unexpectedly, my neighbor came into my room, and he basically wanted to thank me, and he gave me a present, stuff like that. So what I did was, I was so embarrassed, I'm like, oh my god, we're about to get an interruption. So what I did was, I shut the computer down. I closed it. I put it to sleep. And what happened was that the whole stream, because I was, I was signed into the channel, and I was the one live streaming it, moderating it, whatever. Stream shut down. And I said at the time, it was an internet thing when it really wasn't. And Sean was mad, and I know, the whole crew was mad, and I was mad too. But we didn't pick up on that for a couple of weeks, and that's when it started dying down. I guess that sort of idea. Because Sean, this was sophomore year, this is the first year I was here, he started working weekends, he couldn't really do anything. Luca, I guess he was just, out of the idea, so it was basically me and my other friend. And I remember the one weekend that we did this, I think it was via live stream. I started talking about the Giants and, basically, how the hell are we going to beat the Texans? The offensive line's horrible. It stinks. Eric Flowers, Patrick Omame, the offensive line stinks. How are we going to beat these teams with the good edge rushers like Cam Jordan, all these edge rushers? That's the one thing I remember rambling about. Joseph Valby is right. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Turn those notification buttons on so you get notified when a live stream pops or a video drops. What was I going to say? So going on with that, I remember that one stream we did, and after, a couple months after, we just basically said, we're not going to do this anymore. So basically, we're not going to do this anymore, and, we're not really motivated for it, we're not ready for it. So around that time, I had the realization, I would say more of freshman year, because I didn't make the baseball team for my high school back in Pennsylvania. I didn't. So I'm like, I'm not going to be a baseball player. I don't have the stamina. I don't have the athleticism as some of the other guys. I don't have the routine. I don't have the motivation to keep practicing and practicing every day. So that's where I said, I'm not going to be a baseball player when I grow up. I'm going to be a sportscaster. I'm going to be a sports broadcaster. I want to be in the sports media industry. So that's kind of where I got the idea of the Central Media Podcast and stuff like that. But I didn't really have as a direction of my career. That's what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what school I wanted to go to. Internet back in the day was 2 cans connected with a string. That was more like the phones, like not these things, but it was more like you get the point. Anyway, so go to, I would say, junior year, which was 2019, the last time everything was normal, unfortunately. 2019, I took this College Now class. You want to be sports medicine. I know a couple of people that want to be in sports medicine. One of the colleges that I applied to actually was a sports medicine school. But going back to junior year, I took this College Now class. My mom said, you got to get college credits early, whatever. I did it anyway. So there was this College Now class, basically on college guidance. Where do you want to go to school? Had the college process, basically outlining that, which was basically the polar opposite of me applying to schools. McDonald's Wi-Fi, yeah. Basically the polar opposite of schools. Excuse me, I'm looking at something else. Anyway, polar opposite of what happened this year because of the pandemic and everything being virtual compared to, years past where you had, everything. You got college visits, you got college tours, you got college fairs, stuff like that. So that was basically that process. And I started coming up, I said, I'm going to be sports media industry, radio, that stuff. My main, I would say, idols was the Michael Kay show. That was basically where I got the idea, and Michael Kay just generally is a broadcaster. If you guys know who that is the Yankees broadcaster, and he's also hosting a radio show. He's been hosting it for about almost 20 years now. But come February, this is where this portion begins. This is where this begins. There's a lot of other things. So one day, me and my friend Sean, obviously, are talking on PlayStation. My brother says, listen, this page / website / media company, journalism company, this journalism company called AL East Report, they reached out to me. They need writers. So I said, listen, if we're going to go into the sports media industry, we might as well back everything up, do whatever. So we signed up with them. I remember us, putting in a whole bunch of articles or putting a whole bunch of time into it while still having a social life. So that point, honestly speaking, I got carried away with the opportunities and stuff like that. Because around the same time, and I don't have like the most perfect memory of this because obviously, what was going on last year. February, so I signed up, if I'm going to do my chronological order correctly, you guys know them on Twitter, basically, New York Giants Rush. I signed up with them, or at least I DM'd them on Twitter. I said, listen, you guys have any opportunities to be a writer? I signed up there. That's after I got tired a little bit with the AL East Report because they were very inconsistent. I'm not going to lie to you there. I'm not going to, shade everything. I'm not going to basically tell you not the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. AL East Report was not putting out articles. If you go on their website, they're not very consistent. And listen, I am grateful for the opportunity, but they were not very consistent with their articles. It was maybe my Kevin Pillar article when he signed with the Red Sox got posted about 4 days later. So, in my opinion, was it somebody who was like inconsistent, somebody who didn't necessarily have the time? Running a website takes a lot, and that's around the time I started thinking about running a website or at least doing a sports journalism website, but I'm like, I'm not going to pay for a domain. I actually started researching that while I was on a trip to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I was on vacation for a weekend called Energy Conservation Week for any New Yorkers in here, New York students, whatever. So, signed up with New York Giants Rush. AL East Report basically, out of the atmosphere, it wasn't much. I didn't put most effort into it. So I put a lot of effort into NY Giants Rush. So I tried to get as much to do as possible and get ready for college. With that being said, I signed up to be a writer at Empire Sports Media. And for those who follow Fireside Giants and Fireside Yankees and all those, Alex Wilson and Anthony Rivardo, Alex Wilson runs that website. That's Empire Sports Media. Podcast, whatever. And I signed up to be with them, but it wasn't with the Giants, it wasn't with the Yankees, it was actually with the XFL Guardians. And I watched them, quite a bit when they were on. So with that, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll take any opportunity to get. So let me just take a sip of water before I continue. So with that, I'm not going to lie to you, and I obviously, this is nothing against NY Giants Rush. This is not against them. This is, totally, I support what they do, and I also get it because it's a sports media industry. They weren't necessarily the happiest, and this is not creating rift between anybody, obviously. This is just telling a story. NY Giants Rush was not necessarily happy with me signing up to be a part of Empire Sports Media. They said, listen, we're not necessarily happiest. It's kind of like working for Nike and applying for Adidas. And I understood that. Well, now I do, but that back then I was like, eh. So, with that, I'm like, should I leave NY Giants Rush? Should I leave XFL? Not XFL, Empire Sports Media. So I ended up leaving NY Giants Rush and was mainly focused on Empire Sports Media, XFL Guardian, stuff like that. So, around the time, this is before March 13th-ish, that's when everything started shutting down and whatever, I signed up to be a writer with this website called allnewyorksports.com. It's allnysports.com. And I signed up to be a writer. They're a big fan page on Instagram. And Sean's like, listen, there's another website with, opportunities and stuff like that. That's All New Sports, the popular fan page, we should go write for them. So I said, okay, I'll sign up. I ended up applying. I got in. What did I say? Be glad you were not around for the USFL. Well, I've heard about it, but I haven't, done my research on them. But anyway, so with that, pandemic, everything shuts down. I don't want to say laid off, but XFL is gone. With that, I don't have a job anymore. Occupation, internship at Empire Sports Media. I couldn't write on the Nets. I'm not a Nets fan. I mean, I'm more basketball oriented than I was a year ago, but I'm not a Nets fan. So I said, you got any more writing positions? And they said, the only one is the Nets. So I'm like, all right. So that's kind of where I learned my lesson, and I really wish I would have stuck to NY Giants Rush because, creative ideas and creative stuff was kind of my thing, and I always put in the effort with them. But anyway, I'm fine with the stuff I do now, including this YouTube channel. So anyway, keep going. I started talking to a guy, and I can actually pull it up on my phone, but I don't want to keep you guys dragging. So I started talking to a guy, which was a friend of a friend. How much did they pay you? Nobody paid me, Joseph. Nobody paid me. This was basic. NY Giants Rush didn't pay me, which I'm fine with. It's called experience. But if I had been at Empire Sports Media a little longer, they would have paid me. I don't know how much. But anyway, I'm good for those opportunities. I'm grateful for those opportunities. So anyway, friend of a friend, basically, I follow them on, Instagram. And my friend tells me, listen, I know a guy who goes to St. Francis College. He's all about the podcasting. He's all about the sports talk life. You need to contact him and basically say, how can I get this started? And this was before everything shut down. So I started talking with him during the pandemic. And basically when everything shut down and when sports shut down and stuff like that, and I said, listen, how do I get this started? Blah, 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 blah. And he said, listen, you need to define yourself. Whatever you do in your spare time, that's up to you. But you need to decide whether you're going to be a sports broadcaster or whether you're going to be a sports journalist. Those are two different areas. Those are two different, pathways. So, I said, I'm going to be a sports broadcaster. I'm not going to write. I'll do that now, but that will probably be on my resume towards my future jobs and whatever. So, with that, he started giving me, the rundown of podcasting because he used to host a podcast. Right now, it's just a page on Twitter. It's called The Sideline Statsman. I hope you guys check it out. But he originally said, you need to get this stuff to do a podcast. One of these was this mic. This pop filter. that is all stuff I ordered via Amazon, eBay. It came in around, I would say, the week before the NFL draft in 2020. That's when I really started it, obviously, April 17th. So he said, listen, you need Audacity, which was basically, and it was a podcast, so I didn't necessarily put myself on camera. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I didn't put myself on camera, but he said you need to get Audacity because that is basically an audio recording app, and then get a video editor, get sound bites, get stuff like that. Get a podcast host, which is Podbean, and I'm going to be uploading this to Podbean after. But what was I going to say? So I started that stuff, and I created a Twitter account probably, I would say, beginning mid-April, a couple weeks, couple days before I started this. So, obviously, there's always that one troll when you start. This one being Pinstripe Blue. You know, I learned to not interact with the trolls after a while and just block them. But anyway, started on April 17th. And, just give me 1 second. Talking, a lot of water. Potato shouts to you. Hope you do well in college, my friend. You're a big supporter of the channel. So anyway, I didn't basically look at anyone and why, and basically, I didn't look at, what anyone was doing. I'm going to be honest with you. The only two YouTubers, Giants YouTubers that being, because this was originally just a Giants-oriented podcast. The only Giants YouTubers I knew at the time were Cop Pizzle and Ron Effect. Ron Effect I got associated with, or at least I started watching his YouTube channel, going back to 2018 in the summer, because I had no way of watching Giants training camp. They didn't show it on TV because I live in Pennsylvania. So he was basically the way I, watched training camp or whatever. And Cop Pizzle, I, got associated with him, not really associated, but started watching his YouTube channel going back to 2017. My brother actually showed him to me. Well, I'm almost over, so hopefully the last week will work. 3 weeks will work in my favor. Again, good luck. So I only knew two YouTubers, and the name that I first came up with is called the Bleeding Big Blue Podcast, and my one friend helped me out with an intro, and it was basically the same crew from the Central Media Podcast, but those guys were just behind the scenes. If I needed help, they would help me. But with that, I did sort of a scripted first episode. If you guys listen to my first episode on Podbean, I still have it here on YouTube. I didn't show my face or anything, as I said, but it's all scripted. I'm going to be honest with you. It's all scripted. I didn't know, I didn't necessarily have, when I basically came out or wanted to record the first episode, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to stay focused. So I basically stuck to a script. But that's something I don't do now because I feel that's weird. It's like, you're going on, some Blue Ridge Communications TV or basically your local news station and then discussing sports. That's not really what I want this to be. I want this to be a podcast. So around that time, I started reaching out to a couple of people, content creators, radio hosts, players, and asking for interviews. So after that first episode, I basically implemented my opinions, and people got sort of a taste of me. Other than obviously Twitter, and saying, my views were that the Giants should have selected Isaiah Simmons. I think I'm wrong on that one. Despite him, struggling the first couple of weeks of the season, I think Andrew Thomas was the better pick. Now I know. And in the last 3 years, in terms of first-round picks, the Giants have not picked my favorite. I wanted Josh Allen in 2018. I wanted Dwayne Haskins in 2019, but that was fan-base-oriented. And going back to 2020, I wanted Isaiah Simmons, but they picked Thomas. I'm totally okay with that because now I realize, how important the offensive line is. So I would say that Friday. It was either that Friday. Yeah, it was that Friday. Or somewhere around there. Someone texts me and says, listen, I'd be up for an interview. I'll let you know the time and the date. That person was Alan Hahn. He currently hosts a radio show with him and Bart Scott on ESPN, and he also does MSG for the Knicks. If you guys watch MSG Networks, he's usually on the pregame show with Bill Piddo and Wally Zerbiak. that's the guy I interviewed for my second episode, and I was very grateful for that because I did not expect that early to get someone like that. And sports discussion is hard. My father is still disappointed I choose my father's team rival for my soccer team. Well, trust me, I know a couple of people sort of like that. But anyway, let's go back to the original subject. Alan Hahn, he came on, and I basically talked Giants. I talked a little bit Knicks with him also as well. So it was a fun interview. But leading up to that interview, I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't happy because someone approached me with something. And don't anyway think that I am just all about myself, self-oriented. Don't think I'm full of myself. But a couple weeks before that, before I started the podcast, All New York Sports started their website. And at the time, it was Google Sites. It was not very good setup. They will admit it themselves. It was not very good setup, whatever. So, articles was like one a week or something like that, and whatever. It was like one a month. What's up, Ash Money? So it was one article a week. Actually, one article a month for every writer, and they would just push it out whenever they can. Because the uploading was absolute trash, Google Sites. So, let's go back to the stuff. 2 weeks later, the guy who is probably still the CEO, is still involved with Max Edelman, he contacts me or is talking in the All New York Sports chat about interviewing Alan Hahn with me. I'm like, that's weird because this guy never approached me about it. And with that, I was like, listen, I'm thinking to myself, and I told my two friends this, I don't necessarily want to do it with him because this is my score. I don't know if they scored him on, their own. I don't know if they reached out to him. I don't want to do it on the same day because it's for two different things. And I necessarily, at the time, I didn't want my podcast associated with All New York Sports. I wanted it to be my own thing. And this is why, even with Uncut now, I don't associate the two. Because I want this to be my own separate thing, my own separate channel, my own separate podcast. So, I ended up doing, without even contacting him, and I don't think they still interviewed him come to this day, but I interviewed him. Great, interview went well. So go back to, I would say, the third episode. I was really unhappy because, and a lot of people advised me against certain things, not gonna lie to you, but this was around the time that people were criticizing Joe Judge, specifically the New York media and the New York radio hosts were criticizing him because he was not calling out the names of Daniel Jones and Joe Judge. So it was basically my first rant. Basically my first Giants rant. Basically I said, and if you listen and go back to almost a year, I said, listen, these guys don't know what they're talking about. They're basically, no sports is happening. So basically they're digging out of their ass for excuses and content ideas. And, you're not the fans, so you don't pay the tickets to get into the stadium, stuff like that. And one of my friends who was behind the scenes said, I really wouldn't go that route of attacking sports reporters yet and that stuff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, viewers of all kinds, a lesson I have learned in this business as a content creator, as a YouTuber, is that YouTube podcasting is so much different from the stuff you see on TV. YouTube and podcasting, depending on who you're under, whether it be ESPN or whoever, is depending on if they're controlled, is so much different. Because on here I could curse, I could talk my mind, but everything is scripted when it comes to ESPN and stuff like that. They are meant to do hot takes. I've learned that over the course of the past couple of months. So basically, that's what I called them out on, and I still kept up the episode because I'm like, why am I going to delete this? So episode 4. And this is really going to go into my discussion about interacting with content creators a little more. So the first Giants content creator I had on my channel was Cop Hizzle. And, it was a weird way that we did the interviews. The first 2-3 episodes that I had content creators on, Alan Hahn was via a Zoom meeting on my phone, and I was recording on my laptop. Cop Hizzle was via Instagram video chat. Justin Panic, the same thing. So it was kind of weird, but once again, it was recorded via Audacity. But again, I didn't know the technology at the time. I didn't know basically, all the stuff I have now. So, with regard to that, I interviewed Cop Hizzle. He's been one of the nicer people, in my opinion, because I know him personally a little bit, one of the nicer people on Giants content. And then I started reaching out to a lot of people. This spans from the end of April to the mid-May period of time. And I didn't necessarily have a schedule. I had Monday, Tuesday, Friday. I think that was my schedule at the time. So with that, I brought on Justin Panic, Bobby Skinner. I brought on, what's his face? The beat reporter from The Athletic, Dan Duggan. I brought him on for a little bit. I brought on Vincent Rapisardi, who's Big Blue Unbiased. If I'm missing any content creators, I'll go back. Also, I did an interview, and I'm going to explain the process of this because I wasn't really happy. I wasn't proud of this interview. I still have it up, but I was just going to say it right now. I wasn't proud of this interview. I had an interview with Rich Soiber. He was probably one of the better guys that I had for an interview, stuff like that. And he's former Giants offensive lineman, whatever. I didn't necessarily, and obviously you'll make mistakes in the process of just, you'll feel, career lesson, I've learned this throughout my life, you'll need to fail a couple times to succeed. And obviously you'll make mistakes in that path. But I wasn't necessarily the greatest of prepared for that interview. I only had like 10 questions. The episode was only like 20, 30 minutes long. I felt like I didn't do a good job. But nonetheless, he was a nice guy, whatever. So, I also did an interview with Curtis Grant, who's a former Giants linebacker. He is now a truck driver. If you guys haven't already, checked that out, that's from a couple of months ago. So we're going to talk about now getting into the kind of dip in views and 4 months without sports. I just kind of basically throughout the months without sports, and it was a pretty extensive couple months without sports. I started doing flashback Fridays, going back to old Giants games, comeback, stuff like that. I know one of them was the Bears game. I know one of them was the Chiefs game. Bears game from 2018, not from this year, not from last year, whatever. And I started getting creative. I started talking about who's on the hot seat for their jobs. Evan Ingram was one of them. Wayne Gallman was one of them. And through that time, it was around June. And I'm going to say something I'm very uncomfortable saying. I had a argument with Sean, basically all the people involved. This was not even podcast related. I'm not going to get into the subject because it's a very touchy subject now. But with that, we got into a huge argument via Instagram, and it was just very ugly. I'm not going to talk about the subject because, once again, it's very touchy now, considering the recent events. And what happened was the one friend that I leave nameless, me and him are not friends anymore. At the time, we split. It was an ugly ending, whatever. And that part, I kind of got depressed in my life because I'm like, now I lost a friend during this pandemic, which I did multiple times during the pandemic, and I'm still losing friends. But once again, that's life. You gotta live through it. And Sean and Luca were still on the team. The other friend wasn't, but whatever. And I experienced a dip in views. I didn't necessarily put time into the strategy of the channel. I didn't really have a direction as what I wanted to do. So what I wanted to do, I think I started coming up with this in July. I said, listen, I want to change my name and I want to get into the Yankees a little bit. So I changed my name to Big Blue in the Bronx. That also came with, there was another podcast, and it's still out there to this day. This podcast, I think it's called Big Blue, and they were not happy that I was using part of their name. Whatever that argument was, just whatever. It's been a year now. But they weren't happy because I almost wrote for them. But in the end, I didn't necessarily get set up with them. That was one of the opportunities I had. But coming off of that, I changed my name to Big Blue in the Bronx because I wanted to talk Yankees. And, I still wanted to keep the Giants. So I included it. And I think that was a very creative name by myself. It still sticks today. So my first live stream for the Yankees was oriented on opening day. And going back to the NFL draft and the live streams we did, it was day 1, day 2. I didn't do a day 3 stream. Day 1 and day 2 of the draft, and now opening day, we did via Zoom meetings. But I didn't necessarily know how to control it with OBS because we were on a Zoom meeting. I didn't necessarily know how to do a screen share. This is a different laptop than I had for the past 12-ish months. I still have the laptop, but it's smaller, and that's why, I got rid of that laptop because I had to implement the green screen, which we'll obviously get into. Did the Yankees learn how to hit the ball yet? Absolutely not. They lost today again. Anyway, so I implemented that, via Zoom. Looking back on it now, it looks totally stupid. Doing friggin' live streams via Zoom meetings. That was weird. That was a fun time. But anyway, I started talking about, Giants, Yankees. I did different episodes, both oriented. And it was getting interesting because training camp was coming up. Meanwhile, the Yankees were playing, so I kind of had something to wheel on. I kind of had something to talk about. And, let's see. Going down to the down part of August when training camp cuts were coming apart, and obviously the Yankees, I had that to talk about. And I was becoming more oriented, more associated with All New York sports. Because at that time, I'm going to be honest with you, once again, going back to the other part, I'm not self-oriented. I am not full of myself. I introduced a plan to basically restabilize the whole website. I basically, in a way, kind of ripped the owner of the website. I said, listen, we need to do this. We need to do that. We need to have breaking news. We need to have this. We need to have that. We need to have a whole lot of stuff. If we're going to become a successful website. So basically, he appointed me as an advisor to the board, and I got more, interacted with them, and that's, basically WordPress and stuff like that. But if they want to tell their own story, they will. I'm telling the Big Blue in the Bronx story. So towards the end of the month, me and someone I brung on for All New York Sports, his name is Jordan Levine. Me and him do Uncut Sports now. I said, listen, I scored this interview with a Giants beat writer known as Paul Dottino. We could find some stuff out regarding training camp and regarding all these player cuts and stuff, some of the inside. Are you in on this interview? He goes, yeah, definitely for sure, man. So we ended up doing that. I was basically one of my funner episodes because that was fun. Paul's a nice guy. A lot of people rip on him for being a Giants cheerleader. I'd rather be honest, or actually, I'd rather slightly, when it comes to Giants Twitter and stuff like that, I'd rather be a cheerleader than just be a negative Nancy. Because if you're being a Twitter negative Nancy, that means you're complaining on the wrong things. And you're simultaneously complaining, you're complaining for a long time. But once again, Paul's a really nice guy. A lot of people have done interviews with him. Really nice guy. Really down to earth. A lot of these beat writers, they're not down to earth. They just, get the interviews, they get the clicks. But Paul, he also does MSG Networks for the Giants and Giants.com. He's a really nice guy. I'm going to tell you that right now because, behind the scenes and stuff like that. Anyway, so going into September, I obviously talked about football season. I talked about baseball season simultaneously. And I started doing my streams, podcast episodes, live streams, Sunday live streams on Sportscaster. Let me tell you the story about Sportscaster. Sportscaster, and it's not even spelled correctly. Let me spell it in the chat for you guys, because it's weird. So there's this guy named Isaac Edelman, no relation to the guy who currently runs On Your Sports. He was an intern there. Sportscaster was basically trying to be wannabe YouTube, in a sense. It was trying to be a wannabe YouTube, basically just for sports. Talking Yankees, Rangers, whatever sport you want to talk about, you talk about on there. And in the end, they became pretty fraudulent because all of the donations that supposedly people sent you were fake. All the viewers, except for the ones that really joined your live streams, they were fake. So they ended up being pretty fraudulent, and that's a pretty good waste of my time in my lifetime. I should have stayed on YouTube. I should have just, went out and started building an audience, which we will get to related to football season, because I met a couple and started associating with a couple of content creators, which is now the uprising of my channel. So let's keep going. During the season, I would say let's skip a little bit. In October, Cop Pizzle started having call-in shows. So, that was basically after every Giants victory. And knowing the first couple weeks of the season, that was a rare thing. So Cop Pizzle, when the first time it came on, he didn't remember me. He's like, "Oh, we did a podcast episode together." I'm like, "Yeah." And then, we've been pretty good associated ever since. And I know I reference him a lot, but he's been a big part of my YouTube influence. So, with that being said, I gained a couple of subscribers from keep going over there. And, their mods would link the channel in there. They would listen to me and stuff like that. Going from there helped me out. Second content creator. This was more November, December oriented. But first, let me remark on something else. Around that time, I left Owning Sports. A lot of drama, a lot of unneeded stuff. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth. I'm not going to get into all of it, but someone contacted me on another day, and I'll tell you about it. But that's not for me because I don't want to start any riffs, and I really don't feel like dealing with nonsense. I still keep in touch with a few people over there. But anyway, I started Uncut Sports, whatever. So let's get on the Big Blue in the Bronx topic, and this will probably lead towards the end of this live stream. And I know that it's only been 45 minutes, but I've been streaming through this pretty quickly. I'll probably leave a Q&A open for you guys at the end. But yeah, definitely mods are great. Joseph is a mod. Sean is a mod. Anyway, so towards November and December, I still went on Cop Pizzle's call-in shows for victories. And the one was really great. I had a fun time. That was when the Giants won against the Seahawks, which was their last felt like win. Because yes, they won against the Cowboys, but the Eagles also lost, which means we didn't go to the playoffs. There was no victory party then. But we had a great live stream then. I was on there with a couple of content creators. Entertainer was one of them. Bad Dog was one of them. Bobby Woodruff, who is a member of his channel. Just like member, you join. And he's also a member of the Hubs channel. There was a lot of people on there, and it was good. Sox Arizona, he was on there as well. You met a couple of different people, and every time you met somebody different. Every time on there you met somebody different. And with going on his YouTube channel for Victory live streams, that's where I found StreamYard. Going back to Joseph's question, I still use StreamYard today. I'm using OBS today, but StreamYard is being used currently for the Boys in the Big Apple podcast. You see, I don't have any creative designs because I don't feel like paying for it. I'm going to be honest with you. But anyway, I started going on. This is where Joel found me. This is where Joe found me. I started going on the Hubs live streams. Now, I had previously months ago followed him on Twitter, Instagram. I didn't even know who the hell the guy was. I'm going to be honest with you. This is nothing against the Hub because I've gone on a lot of his streams. I went on his mock draft stream. I think it was, yesterday. Very fun. You should start a Discord. Yeah, I actually have a Discord channel. But a lot of, in the time that I implemented it, a lot of people didn't join. It was just me. It was just three of us, me, Sean, and Luca. But I'm going to get that running again, definitely. I do have a link for it. I'll probably send it out at some point. I do have to stabilize it. Respect for Hub and his Twitter likes. Yeah. If you guys seen that one stream where I had Hub on, we basically exposed the fact that he likes to rubberneck. This is where me and Joe come in. So, yes. I went on the Hubs live streams, and two of the live streams I went on the Entertainers channel. One of them was a couple of weeks before the Seahawks game. I don't remember which game. I want to say it was the Bengals, or it was some sort of week. I don't know what it was. But I went on the Entertainers channel, and he had a couple of content creators on. And I'm going to be honest with you, nothing against them once again. I didn't know who these content creators are, but I know them today. Pestilence, PTA Sports, Pest, the analyst. Well, Pestilence is really his Twitter name. Nate Talks Giants. That's when I first met him. That's when I first had a conversation with him. The Hub, I think, was on there. This was a couple of months ago, and I don't think he has a stream up anymore, but I'm just telling you how I met on there. And I started talking football, and Cop Pizzle came on. It was me, Entertainer, Cop Pizzle, and Nate just generally talking. People were talking about draft, while Cop Pizzle was like, hey, it's still Giants season. So that's where all of my viewers sort of slowly started peaking. And I was grateful for that. And if you're ever a content creator, if you ever want to start content creating, definitely hook up with people. If you think they're above you and you don't think they're going to accept an invite on your channel, you do it anyway. I've gotten surprised with some. If it's, people declining me, if it's people, saying, hey, listen, I'll come on your podcast, whatever. Quick story, going back to a couple months ago, the first actual interview, I kind of lied, it wasn't Alan Hahn. The first actual interview I scored, keep that in quotations because it was kind of a failed interview, was Jonathan Hillman, a former Giants running back. And I was so excited, the first player I had on, or at least wanted to have on. He ended up ditching me. I said, listen, are you ready for the interview? And he was totally up for it at first. But then, I gave him the date, and I was ready. And I kept contacting him. I said, on the day. And he basically left me on red. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was depressed. I wasn't happy. I was down for a couple of days after that because I'm like, man, a player turned me down. I was upset. And a lot of people, I don't tell this to a lot of people because I was embarrassed, oh my God. And I asked Justin Pennick for advice. He's like, yeah, but, that's your YouTube life. And I understand what you're saying, but, that's the YouTube life. A lot of players and content creators decline interviews, especially for talking Giants and stuff like that. So going back all the way to November, December, January. In January, I reached 100 subscribers. Thank you guys, obviously, for tuning in and stuff like that. We are at 175 now, but I hit 100 subscribers in January. I was peaking with going on the hub streams, going on Pizzle streams, doing stuff on Twitter, stuff like that, doing my own podcast episodes, and I was still doing the podcast at the time. I was doing it more organized because I was doing it via OBS, and I switched a couple of video editors because with my OBS and my small computer, the FPS for the video, it wasn't good. It was like 24. It was not good. Now it's like 50, at least according to OBS. But anyway, with that, I started peaking with subscribers. Then Cop Pizzle comes out with a video. And he says, he basically calls out all the clickbait content creators who are talking about the Giants should get Deshaun Watson. And, I basically agreed with him. And I actually chatted with him a little bit. And I said, listen, people who put out this content is bullcrap. Chris Carlin's one of them. He's a ESPN radio host. He's boring as hell, I'm going to be honest with you. Another one of them, Matt Lombardo, beat reporter. Boring as hell. Very, very Giants-oriented. He's an Eagles fan, so that should tell you, Eagles fan writing on Giants stuff. That's like a Knicks fan writing on Nets stuff. How do you think that's going to work out? Exactly. Doesn't make a difference. Actually, makes a difference, but you get the point. I'm sorry doing a lot of hand gestures. But anyway, going on to that fact, I basically started informing them of who, and I kept my receipts of who is making this clickbait content. Matt Lombardo, Chris Carlin, a couple others. And he shouted me out in the video. He goes, if you have not already, go subscribe to Big Blue in the Bronx. He's not a booger eater. Go back to his video. That lifted me to 100. And I shouted him out. I said, listen, thank you so much. I'm at 100 subscribers now. And ever since then, the channel's been on the uprise. And obviously, let's go to February, the later end of February. I also scored the entertainer on a episode of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. You cannot have a good discussion without hand moving. That's pretty true, especially if you're Italian. I'm part Italian, but not too much. I scored the entertainer on an interview. I think this was going back to January or February. But anyway, so I noticed that my channel was not as growing as fast as I wanted it to. And I said to myself, and I had a little, I would say, break. The uncut thing was still going on at the time. And I said, I've spent all this time restructuring On Your Sports and Uncut, but I didn't restructure my own channel. Despite me going on different channels, they've kind of done with the job. They've kind of done the job for me. But I really haven't put the time into my channel, in terms of podcasting, in terms of stuff like that. I have not put the time in to restructure my own channel. So that's when it was a good idea, but it was a bad idea. I went on Reddit and I said, listen, I need help with my channel. I need help basically how to do stuff. So basically I got advice. Go to the YouTube Content Creator Academy. It's not a real academy. What's up, Jersey Life 86. Thanks for popping in, man. So basically, for about a week, I popped in YouTube Content Creator Academy. They basically taught me how to, and I didn't finish it, I'm not going to lie to you, but they basically taught me how to, sit in through premieres. And that helps me a lot, because a lot of my premiere videos do better than when I just throw something out. Getting viewers, doing tags, having a good video editor, and having good FPS, having good camera, stuff like that. So that's when I started restructuring. I didn't have a new computer at the time, but I got a new video editor. I got a green screen. I could actually show it to you right now a little bit. I got a green screen around the time. So let me just turn this around a little bit. This is the green screen. It's a blue screen really, but it's, two different colors on the back and the front. And with that, I did a couple other things just behind the scenes. And it started going up like I wanted it to. And obviously, that's thanks to you guys, that stuff. So I restructured it. The first guest, I guess, in the structured part, also to add, I had a new YouTube channel trailer. Because for months, I was always lurking upon creating a new trailer because I now have Yankees oriented. I always kept the old Giants one up there. And, what was I going to say? Well, yeah, of course, yeah. But now I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Okay. The first content creator I had in the restructure was Jules of Giants Brawl. I don't know if he's still with them anymore. He's also with the Big Blue Offensive Podcast. But I created a new trailer because, for months I was lurking upon getting a new trailer because I had Yankees and I only had a Giants trailer. So finally, I took the time out of my day, I took the time on the weekend to create a Giants-Yankees trailer. That's still up. If you go on the channel, if you go to the link, Big Blue in the Bronx, whatever, it's in my Twitter, whatever, you press on it, it takes you right to the trailer, and you'll be able to watch it. It has Yankees preview, stuff like that, and whatever. So that's where I restructured, did a couple of things, and fortunately around the time that my green screen over here and the computer that I had, were not getting along. The computer was very small. I tried doing stuff with the fan, which is basically, if you hear a background sound, that is the fan, but it's better, I would say, cooled down than the other computer. It was a small computer, and, every time, and if you go back on one of my podcast episodes, I'm just twitching out because this didn't connect with OBS and the small computer. It was not a good mixture. So I ended up telling my dad, who is a computer technician, Verizon worker who knows around that stuff, I said, listen, I'm having this problem. He goes, well, let me give you a new computer. So from a friend of a friend, he got this new computer, and I'm glad I have it because now it interacts better with the green screen, blue screen, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, also shouts, my mom got me this green screen, blue screen. Some of this stuff would not be done without both of my parents and the people around me. So that's pretty. And also, one more thing to explain before I actually end this. You guys can ask me questions and stuff like that. But I started, I would say, actually a month ago, was the last released podcast episode of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Because around the time baseball was starting for me, uncut, doing other things in my life, I'm like, college is coming up. Do I really have time to stick to a schedule? So that's where I said to two of my friends, I said, my idea is getting off the podcast life for a while, except for Boys in the Big Apple, and I'll get into that in a second, and just sticking to videos, which actually has gotten me success so far. Because, the YouTube attention span, unless, you go into YouTube 10 years ago, is not that great. The attention span's not great. That's just Generation Z, that's millennials, whoever you want to call it. The attention span's not great. But doing the videos, I'm going to say, is a lot easier. I I would say, questionable upon moving off the podcast platform a little bit, because I don't know if that would help me in terms of like my college career and stuff like that. But I'm like, you know what? Still knowing about the sport and doing stuff in the college related to the college I got accepted to, St. Francis College in Brooklyn. That's where I'm going to college. And their, broadcast studio and their SFC TV stuff, all that stuff is going to help me in college. This and the podcast before, obviously, is going to help me. And my knowledge of the sport and different sports will definitely help me. So then I said, you know what? I'm going to move off the podcast for a little bit. I do want to stick to videos. And let's quickly go back to the Boys in the Big Apple podcast. So obviously, if you guys have been tuning in since the beginning, me and Sean and Luca, put the other friend aside, former friend aside, we've been trying to do something and stick to it for a long time, going back to 8th grade, which was almost 5 years ago. So we're trying to figure out something. So what happened is me and Sean and Luca had this discussion. This was actually, I'm going to say, the weekend that spring training started in February. Right, I want to say February. Yeah, end of February, around that weekend. And, I said, listen, I'm tired of these baseball rules. I'm tired of this friggin', run on second base and all these rules. Because one of the rules that the MLB implemented for the first couple of days of spring training was that, if a pitcher throws over 20 pitches and if you're in a jam, you can literally end the inning. So it's like a gimmick. And we started talking. So what happened was Monday, which was the day of the thing kind of starting, Monday, what happened was we went on a Zoom meeting, but I started recording and I started doing some stuff with OBS, Zoom meeting, whatever, and we started talking about it. We started passing around. It was like a 20-minute video. So I later learned that when I was editing it after school, I'm like, holy crap, I didn't do this right because Zoom audio didn't sync with OBS. So I'm like, crap, we got to do this again. So real quickly, I'll get to it in just a second. I need a lot of water. Anyway, so I'm like, crap, OBS didn't sync with Zoom. What am I going to do now? I still want to get this out. So I said, let's go live. Let's go live. 8 o'clock, 8:10, and we're going to start talking about these topics. So we did. But it turned into something that we didn't expect. It was a fun stream. What was I going to say? A couple of people joined the call-in. I had a call-in period. We started talking football for a little bit. I know Sammy Berger and Keith Archer, both of them from Uncut. They called in, basically gave their thoughts. I think Greg Gullo gave his thoughts. Keith Archer, by the way, is All Day Giants. If you haven't already, go to his YouTube channel and subscribe to him. He's got content on the Giants. And we're like, oh my God, this is fun. And when my brother was showering, we were basically done with this stream. Sean said to me, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I was not a fan of going live. I'm like, really? We're going to go live over this? And he said, but the total stream changed my mind. We had a lot of fun. I want to start something. I want to start a show. I want to start a podcast. So I said, okay, I'm down with it. I asked my brother, started coming up with names that night. I rolled around a couple of names. They were okay. Came up with Boys in the Big Apple podcast. So basically, we were going to do it every Monday, 8:10 p.m. because Sean is off work Monday. And, pretty much I have an open schedule as of right now on Mondays after baseball practice and whatever, and so on and so forth. So we discussed potential guests, and we still have a doc to this day of potential guests we want to have on in the future. And our first two guests, and we always have call-ins because I'm so thankful for my viewers, but I'll get to having the call-ins in a second. So our first guests were Cop Pizzle and Entertainer. There's so many good duos out there. That happens to be one of them in terms of Giants content creators. And my whole emphasis of having them on the first episode is starting off with a bang. Reaching out to a new audience. Wanted to have not just a sports-oriented conversation, but have a fun conversation, And my purpose for the call-ins is because a lot of these, YouTubers whether it's, you have 10 subscribers, whatever, you're a YouTuber, or if you have a lot of subscribers and you're popular, a lot of them don't care about their viewers. A lot of them don't care about their viewers. A lot of them don't associate with them. A lot of them just don't pay attention to them. And I said, we're going to have a call-in like we did on that one stream we did. And every stream, every Boys in the Big Apple podcast I've been doing so far, I've been having call-ins. I've let people call in. Joel knows that. Potato knows that. He's been on several call-ins. Jagger, who's been my childhood friend, he knows that. So I'm very viewer-oriented. That's one of my purposes on this channel, is not just to put out the content and get the views. I'm not a viewer. Don't take me as clickbait, but also to interact with the fan bases of different fan bases, whatever, and, just get their thoughts, and we could have a discussion. It's not just, texting through comments and stuff like that. That doesn't solve anything. When you see them face to face, when they talk, you get a better understanding of where they're coming from depending on their view. That happened with Greg because he was very anti-Gettleman during free agency, but when Kenny Galladay and Adoree Jackson signed, he's basically like, okay, now I'm on the train. I have to head out, Big Blue. Appreciate it. Great content. Thank you, Joseph. I'll actually be ending this in a couple of minutes. But for the Boys in Big Apple podcast, we've been doing it ever since. We've been streaming Yankee games, streaming Knick games. When it comes to football season, streaming Giants games. Potential guests we've had on so far, we had Robert Pimsner, who is a reporter / founder of Pinstripe Prospects. That's the Yankees minor leagues. If you guys haven't already, if you're Yankee fans, check him out. He's he's a good content creator in terms of, and they don't get a lot of flack, they don't get a lot of views, but definitely well deserved there. But as stuff that's going on right now, basically the lead up to April 17th of 2021, still doing this. At some point, I might want to hop back on the podcast train to do it a Tuesday, Friday thing, but this is obviously just one of those things out of the blue because I wanted to commemorate the anniversary of me being on YouTube and just basically sharing the experience with y'all, because some of y'all don't know the full 12 months of what's been going on in my life related to this and stuff like that. Just some quick shout outs. If you guys haven't already, go check out the Hub's last night stream. Very, very fun stream. It was last minute by him. He even admitted himself. We had a fun stream doing the mocks and talking some Giants football about Jason McCourty and stuff like that. Tomorrow I will be on Diggy's stream. We're doing mock draft and a couple other things on there coming up to draft week. Monday is the Boys in the Big Apple podcast. 8:10 p.m. We're going to have Patrick Hennessy on of Unhinged Yankees. The Yankees have been doing well lately, so that's going to definitely be a topic. Tomorrow is going to be a Yankees recap as well. But, what was I going to say? If you guys haven't already, one of my most important videos that I've really stressed about is, not stressed, but just stressed the topic on, is go back and watch my last video. That video being the one about the multiple NFL teams taking away and opting out of the preseason workouts. Excuse me, not preseason, but off-season workouts. Watch that video. I know Joel has, I know Potato has, I know a couple others have. Go watch that video, because it is very important, and a lot of people don't talk about that stuff. A lot of people don't talk about how the, underprivileged NFL players are getting less of a chance with the preseason decrease. A lot of people, are missing the point that J.C. Treader and the NFLPA want more for the big stars, and they want, basically all virtual offseason from now on up till training camp. So, and I actually did research and statistics and stuff like that. A lot of content creators, and just in general, NFL and MLB kind of has a similar relatance in terms of the minor leagues, but a lot of NFL content creators do not stress that, because in my opinion, they are very, I would say, afraid of flack from the casual fans, because the casual fans will say, oh, it's the player's decision. Meanwhile, they don't know shit. But that's pretty much the end of that, and basically why I did the video. But I'll leave the next 2 minutes. If you guys want to ask any questions, comments, I'll respond to it. And then I'm going to pretty much end the stream from there. But if you guys have any comments, I'll just read through here. The comments might be a little delayed because I'm doing this from YouTube. Excuse me, I'm doing this from OBS to YouTube and not from StreamYard, because I did want to get the template out. So if you guys have any questions, next 2 minutes I'll leave to you guys, and then I will pretty much end it. And shout outs to everyone who has been here. 17 likes, probably one of the highest I've earned in terms of live streams, in terms of videos. The most viewers we had at this point, I believe, was 11. So shout outs to those people who stuck in for the longest time. Let's see, people are DMing me. Will DJ win a Super Bowl? Hopefully, man. This year is a make or break year for him. This is a make or break year for him. Let's see. Hey, listen. I will always root on... Hold on, just give me 1 second. I will always root on people who, and going back to the Paul Dottino thing, like the cheerleader thing, a lot of people, a lot of people are more, I would say, not outspoken. I don't know the correct word, but they're not going to say anything. They won't say anything negative about the team. They'll just make unbiased comments, but they won't say anything like, oh my God, Daniel Jones is going to win 3 Super Bowls. So they're kind of mid-even fans, but I do, excuse me for the burp, I do appreciate the people being very, very confident in this team, because I'd rather you be confident and say more of the truth than be negative and say less of the truth. So, I just respond to this one Twitter DM that's related to tomorrow's live stream, by the way, with Diggy. Be sure to check that out, guys. Doing live streams, mock drafts, a lot of stuff coming in with the next week. I'm definitely going to be doing options and trade down options, a video related on that this week. So, definitely keep out for that. So, okay. Hopefully he won't have to run for his life this year. Yeah, I hope that as well. I know it was lagging for a straight sec. If I'm lagging, I apologize, but that's the encoding for what's his face, OBS overloading. If the Eagles fans have faith in Hurts, we sure of hell better have confidence in DJ. Yeah, absolutely, Joel. Absolutely. I mean, they might draft a quarterback, which is basically mind-boggling to me. But pretty much that's going to be it. I appreciate every single one of you who is subscribed to the channel, who is viewing the videos, any new people, any people who've been here for, a couple of months, a couple of weeks, a couple of days, the past year. I appreciate you guys, and I really wanted to do this because I feel like a lot of the newer viewers didn't really know my journey coming onto YouTube, and how much of a sort of a hassle, but I would say a worth it hassle here on YouTube. So shout outs. I'm going to give everybody in the comments a shout out. Shout outs to Jonathan, Sean's cousin. Shout outs to Potato. Shout outs to Joel. Shout outs to Joseph Baldy. Shout outs to Jersey Life. Shout outs to I think Ace was in here. I think that's his name, right? Yeah, shout outs to Ace. Shout outs to, let's see who else is in here. Yeah, shouts to Ace. Shouts to Ash Money. Yeah, you guys haven't already checked out his channel. I'm actually going to do something. Now, I'm going to actually paste that Discord link into the chat if you guys want to join. Get your friends to join. Get people from other different channels and different platforms to join. I'm going to actually get that invite link now, and I'll paste it in the chat because I like being nice like that. Because I don't know if Potato has a Discord, but I know Joseph Baldy and Joel, they're both in the Discord for the Hubs stream. So I have to update the mods and stuff a little bit, but that is the Discord link. It should be sent in there, guys. Once again, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you guys for subscribing. Like, comment, subscribe. Turn those notification button on. Turn the notification button on so you get a notification when the live streams pop and a video drops. I'm always in there for the premieres, guys. I will never miss a premiere. Thank you, guys. Peace out. Have a good night. 5:30 tomorrow. I'll be on Dickie's stream. I'll have a Yankees recap out tomorrow. And then, obviously, Boys in the Big Apple podcast. That is going to be 8:10 p.m. with Patrick Hennessy from Unhinged New York, Unhinged Yankees. Peace out, everyone. Have a good night.